In the Christian faith, one of the central defining beliefs about God is that the divine is a singular being expressed in three identifiable manifestations: the Creator, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. This belief in a Holy Trinity is one a great many people, including Christians, find hard to comprehend fully. It seems to defy common sense. My own understanding of the Trinity came from something I've long understood about human beings. We often speak of human nature as if that's a single, monolithic thing. But I find three distinct human natures interwoven in each of us, sometimes in harmony, and sometimes working at cross purposes. There is the flesh and blood human, with a nature ruled by animal needs and drives, governed by the workings of our chemistry and our biology. Then there is the thinking human, able to comprehend and reason, study and learn, always seeking advantage and benefit. And then there is the emotive human, the intuitive, feeling, judging, bonding nature that desires social connection and intimate affiliation, that knows right from wrong and good from evil. I see the Holy Trinity in similar fashion, three distinct patterns of being arising from a singular wholeness. The Creator is the mind of God, the Holy Spirit is the judge and the empath of God, and Jesus Christ, the Son of God, is the divine incarnation made flesh to enter the creation and experience it as human beings do. But Christianity is not the only religious tradition that offers a trinity of three sacred beings emerging from an unbroken whole. In Hinduism, there is an idea of the Trimurti, or three forms. What is interesting about the Hindu Trinity is the nature and the roles of the constituent forms. There is Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the transformer, who is also called the destroyer. Although this concept of Trinity never achieved widespread belief among Hindus the way Holy Trinity did among Christians, the symbolism of the roles is nevertheless compelling. I believe the universe is endlessly remade, kept in existence by a continuous process that creates the universe anew an uncountable number of times each second. But for the universe to be created anew, it must first be destroyed. A constantly created universe is also a constantly destroyed universe. There is a saying, often attributed to Hindus, perhaps because of the archetypal roles in the Trimurti, that there must be chaos before creation. In this edition of the Temporal Reverie, I want to consider the roles of creator, preserver, and destroyer, and how they might suggest the possibility of a very deep pattern woven through the entire universe that preserves it through an endless cycle of creating and destroying it. Is there a way to describe how such an endless cycle would operate within the vibrational reality we imagine? Is the very existence of the physical universe sustained by a vibrational heartbeat that brings about its endless death and resurrection? According to the Heisenberg uncertainty principle from quantum mechanics, quantum systems contain pairs of traits that cannot simultaneously exist in well-defined states. One such pair of traits is the position and the momentum of a subatomic particle, such as an electron. If position is well-defined, then momentum is totally unpredictable. If momentum is well-defined, then the next position could be anywhere. Interactions, such as those we create in different experiments to try to measure these quantum traits, can force a particle like an electron to assume a well-defined position or momentum, but whichever does so, the other attribute goes totally uncertain. But this situation may not take place in such a seemingly binary on-off manner. A transition may occur in which one trait is mostly, but not entirely well-defined, with the other mostly, but not entirely uncertain. As the balance tips, there's a crossover point in which both traits simultaneously express the greatest amount of uncertainty possible. In a manner of speaking, you could catch an electron in that transition and find it has neither well-defined position or momentum. In effect, the electron could seem nowhere at all. This transition takes place quite routinely as the electron hops from spot to spot inside the energy orbital it occupies. While electrons, as well as other subatomic particles, wink in and out of existence as they teleport, we never see this teleporting happen in our everyday world. Here, in the classical magnitude of order, objects don't vanish from one location and then reappear instantly at some random new location. Why should that be the case? There are two reasons we never see ordinary objects undergo quantum teleportation. First, and most important, is the act of teleportation itself happens randomly. Second is the staggering number of particles that make up any everyday object. For something small and simple such as a single coin to teleport from one spot on a dresser to another, think of what would be required. Every single one of the subatomic particles that are part of that coin would have to teleport at exactly the same time, and they would have to teleport to the same relative locations to one another some distance away. Given the random nature of these quantum effects, the odds of an entire coin teleporting in such a way is so ridiculously small as to easily be rounded to zero. At any given instant, some numbers of subatomic particles within the coin are teleporting, but almost certainly not to the same location. The law of averages keeps the coin right where you left it. The subatomic whack-a-mole game leaves most of the matter in the coin in a sufficiently well-defined state at every point in time that the teleportation of individual particles has no effect on the entire coin. If you could get all the subatomic particles of any ordinary object get into some complete quantum sync, meaning all the particles undergo the exact same quantum shift in traits at exactly the same way together as a group, you'd see very strange effects indeed. A book might vanish from one spot on your coffee table, only to reappear a moment later at another spot. Objects might momentarily be in two places at the same time. Things that might appear to be solid might allow your hand to pass right through them. Who knows what our experience might contain if whole assemblies of atoms, along with every subatomic particle they contain, had the means to change quantum states en masse. What about quantum theory tells us about every one of the subatomic particles that make up our solid reality is that they exhibit pairs of traits that are locked in strange teeter-totters of uncertainty. These traits are known as complementary variables. The most famous such pair of complementary variables are the position and momentum of a particle. Another such pair are the spins of two particles joined by entanglement. The wave and particle state condition is another complementary variable pair. When two traits are linked in this way, the more one trait in the pair becomes well-defined, which is to say has a more certain quality to it, the more the other trait in the pair becomes ill-defined and fuzzy. A kind of trade-off takes place in which an increase in the certainty of one trait forces an increase in the uncertainty of the other. While it may seem that this back and forth is instantaneous, in actuality, the shift happens in a continuum of uncertainty. Imagine a moment a subatomic particle that has a completely defined, measurable with certainty position. At that very moment, the particle has a totally uncertain momentum. We know where it is, but have no idea where it will go next. Then a shift in uncertainty happens. The position of the particle gradually becomes less and less well-defined, increasing in uncertainty. At the same time, the momentum of the particle grows more and more well-defined, more certain. We can suppose that as this shift takes place, there is a point along the way in which both traits in the pair achieve the greatest amount of uncertainty they can both exhibit together. Neither is completely uncertain, but ever so briefly, neither is very certain either. If we could somehow suspend the particle in that exact state, the state in which neither position nor momentum were certain, would it then have any meaningful position or momentum at all? But what if all the complementary variables of all subatomic particles could somehow be brought to this state of maximum uncertainty at the same time? Might the cumulative effect of that much uncertainty be the effective end of the universe as we experience it? A condition of universe-wide chaos, in which nothing had any distinct boundaries or substance. If such a condition could be triggered, the collapse of enough certainty to give reality any persistence would effectively bring about the destruction of the entire universe. While it may be intriguing to think about a state of quantum synchronization that drives everything in reality to a state of chaos, of maximum uncertainty, what would the point of such a condition be? And what could possibly produce such an effect across the entire universe? As I've mentioned previously, I believe the universe exists in a state of constant creation. One way to imagine such a state is that the conditions of reality found within the universe are endlessly being refined and reworked while maintaining a constant state of existence. That's a very understandable way to envision the continuous creation of reality. But the nature of reality, at the smallest and finest level of detail we can theorize, doesn't normally operate in a smooth, continuous manner. Quantum mechanics gets its name from the word quantum, which means a particular amount, or the fundamental unit of a physical magnitude. An example of this is the location of an electron orbiting inside an atom. An atom of hydrogen has just one electron found at the lowest possible energy state. It's found at the lowest possible energy state because nature is pretty lazy and keeps just about anything at the lowest energy-consuming state possible, unless you agitate it by adding energy. Common sense suggests that if we start adding energy to that solitary electron, its orbit would gradually get further and further out. But that's not what happens when we begin adding energy to that electron. Until the amount of energy added reaches a minimal amount, the electron remains in that lowest energy state. But once that minimal amount of energy is added, the electron suddenly jumps from the lowest state, called the ground state, into the next higher energy state. The amount of minimal energy is a quantum of energy. So the jump from one energy state to another happens in whole steps all at once, or not at all. Imagine that happening with your car as you're driving. Your car sits at 0 miles per hour no matter how much you push down on the gas pedal until the pedal hits a specific amount, after which the car instantly jumps from 0 miles per hour to 10 miles per hour. Pressing further doesn't have any effect until the pedal hits the next specific amount, after which the car jumps from 10 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. The jumps could be called quanta, which is the plural of quantum, of velocity. The point is that at most, the most fundamental level of reality we can identify, changes often happen in all or nothing steps, like the stairs in a staircase. Given that discovery, it perhaps makes more sense to think of the continuously created universe being updated not in a gradual, continuous manner, but in minimal leaps. Such leaps would change the conditions of reality across the entire universe all at once, like a quantum of change. If these leaps in creation are very small but happen exceedingly fast, the effect would resemble the way a digital audio appears to take a chain of samples and make them seem continuous by making the sampling frequency very high, or the way movies project a series of single still images in order to create the illusion of motion by projecting them very quickly. If the constant creation of the universe is accomplished in unimaginably small but nevertheless discrete leaps, we are left to wonder by what method these changes are expressed. First, if all the phenomena in the physical universe are ultimately defined by a vast and complex pattern of vibration, the changes expressed in the universe would amount to alterations in that underlying vibrational pattern. Each leap would be a substitution of one possible permutation of that pattern for another one. Second, these pattern substitutions would impact the whole of the universe in unison. They would also account for the natural and expected behavior we see and describe by the so-called laws of nature identified by science. And if imagined in just the right way, they could also provide the basis for possible phenomena that the so-called laws of nature would not predict or would even describe as impossible. One way to think about such a dynamic is exemplified by the technique of stop-motion animation, such as you find in claymation. The scene is stationary, posed in just the way an animator wants for a single frame of the film, taken as a single snapshot. After taking that single snapshot, there is an interlude in which the animator adjusts objects in the scene, moving them in very small but intentional amounts. After making all of the adjustments, the next snapshot is taken. When these snapshot frames are projected, they present an illusion that not only appears to be continuous motion, but which entirely omits all the adjustments taking place between each frame. For a single sliver of the finest slice of the thinnest imaginable interval, the universe has the reality we know, a reality expressed by the present state of the vibrational pattern that defines the universe. In that pattern, things are in their state of maximum certainty, which is to say that uncertainty is found in an entirely random, unsynchronized distribution. Then something happens that destroys that state by disrupting the pattern, possibly by imposing a universe-wide state of maximum uncertainty. Just as quickly, the disruption ends, returning the universe to what seems to be its previous reality, but which has in fact been altered in infinite, minute, and imperceptible ways. Then immediately after that, the disruption happens again, followed by a return to reality, over and over and over again, endlessly. The trigger for such a process could well be yet another vibration expressed deep within the fabric of reality, a synchronizing pulse that destroys, then recreates all of existence, all of the universe, and everything we know. A vibration I call the Genesis Oscillation. If any portion of the New Testament is imbued from the first verse to the last with the deep mystery of the divine, it would be the book of Revelation. Said to be written by the Apostle John at the age of 92, Revelation provides a detailed account of events said to lay out an apocalyptic prophecy of the end of the world as we know it. At one point, a character taken to be Jesus Christ speaks to the narrator. He said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To the thirsty I will give water without cost from the spring of the water of life." As the most human, approachable expression of the divine, Jesus describes himself, and therefore God, as both beginning and end of all things. If the universe is a pattern of vibration arising from the background field of divine consciousness, endlessly destroyed and created by an oscillation originating from the divine mind, this is a very apt description for God. The nature of the Genesis Oscillation drives a cycle of the destruction and recreation of the entire universe. They might accomplish this as a vibration of a very unique signature, distributed throughout the whole universe. Such an oscillation could perhaps be holographic in nature. Holograms encode their full image information across their entire surface. Unlike a photograph, in which each region of the image holds information for just that portion of the image, a hologram holds the entire image distributed across every region. In recent years, science has begun contemplating that the universe may actually have a holographic structure. If we think of the Genesis Oscillation like a typical wave train, it would consist of pulses that alternate, going from zero to maximum travel in one direction, then reversing back to zero, then going to maximum travel in the opposite direction. Something about that wave pattern triggers the quantum synchronization that collapses the universe from the state of reality we know to one of chaos and maximum uncertainty. Since we're dealing in a narrative that is almost entirely speculative, it doesn't really matter which feature of the Genesis Oscillation causes the collapse. What matters is that the Genesis Oscillation alternates between two key points, one of which collapses the quantum state of the universe to its maximum uncertainty and undifferentiated haze. When the Genesis Oscillation moves away from that point, and then subsequent chaos, it goes to the other key point, where the universe returns to its random, unsynchronized uncertainty, the one that defines the condition of maximum certainty. In a state of maximum certainty, the universe again assumes the shape, definition, contours, and textures of the reality we know. In effect, the universe is created once again. In this way, the Genesis Oscillation is both the beginning and the end of the universe that arises from the divine mind to endlessly destroy and recreate the entire universe. Jesus Christ, as a manifestation of the divine mind, would indeed be an expression of God as articulated in Revelation, as the Alpha and the Omega. There is a well-known Zen proverb that tells us, "It is the silence between the notes that makes the music. It is the space between the bars that cages the tiger." The narrative of the Genesis Oscillation describes the universe in very similar terms. We think of the universe, including time itself, as being part of a continuous, unbroken whole, but that may just be our perception-confined vision of the notes or the bars in our experience. Perhaps it is the silence of the collapsed universe, the space of recurring chaos that defines our reality. The belief that there must be chaos before creation is very probably true, while at the same time insufficient to gain a complete understanding of an underlying dynamic that shapes our reality. The aphorism is insufficient because it only captures a part of the endless cycle that keeps the universe in existence. Driven by the underlying heartbeat of the Genesis Oscillation, the universe is endlessly destroyed, then recreated. But those occurrences of destruction and creation are just markers of changes in the state of reality that forever shifts from maximum certainty to maximum uncertainty and back again. Because we ourselves only have a distinct form in the interval of maximum certainty, during which the universe has tangible expression, we are unable to see the intervals of maximum uncertainty that arrive like clockwork. We occupy the universe in its state of corporeality, during which things have shape and form and transform according to what science calls the laws of nature. But with a rapidity we cannot know, that being is disrupted by collapse, followed by chaos. Ourselves negated amid the chaos, we never notice it. But the chaos itself is short-lived, followed by creation again that reinstates our familiar condition of corporeality. And so it goes, without end. Corporeality, followed by collapse, followed by chaos, followed by creation, followed by corporeality again. Just as matter and energy themselves shift in state between particle and wave, the larger framework in which matter, energy, space, and time have any meaning at all shifts between being and not being. Next time on the Temporal Reverie, I want to take a deeper look in this unending cycle. A universe that collapses into chaos and maximum uncertainty, that subsequently takes shape again with an inescapable randomness, has no particular reason to return to the shape it had previously. Why doesn't an entirely different shape arise when the universe is recreated? Could it be that something long contemplated by mystics and spiritual teachers has a role to play in making sure that things are put right again as they are being put together again? A fair question to ask about all this narrative speculation regarding the endless creation of the universe is why would such a complicated architecture be necessary? What purpose might it serve? For me, there is an undeniable appeal to such a notion of the universe, because a universe that is constantly being created according to this particular dynamic offers a chance to act as co-creator of reality to a degree that exceeds our wildest hopes. In the Greek alphabet, between alpha and omega, is the letter delta, which is often used in science to denote change. Between the beginning and end produced by the Genesis Oscillation, we have opportunity to insert changes that shape the recreated universe. And those changes, simply put, are the means to miracles. I'd like to know what you think of this episode. Please leave any questions or thoughts to share in the comments below. My thanks to God for this chance to share with all of you, and may the gifts of love, joy, peace, and enlightenment come to you all.